The work begins by showing us a sea of blood and our protagonist mourning the death of his comrades and family, with only him left. Immediately, we hear someone saying, "Even the god of war in the human race is weak and can't withstand an attack, and you who don't even know how to fight just hide like a useless one." How will you face me, the alchemy god Kim Fung? This was the Demon Emperor. Even though terrified by the martial pressure of the Demon Emperor, the protagonist laughs with tears on his face and says, "I, Kim Fung, the alchemy god of my generation, spent my whole life on this, 10,000 years, but I can't even cultivate the basic stage of martial arts. I can only watch without doing anything." Revolted, the protagonist takes a pill and charges at the Demon Emperor and his army, saying, "Today, Kim Fung will fight to the end with this scum until the last drop of blood." But the protagonist is not immobilized in his deathbed. He says, "My body is useless for training, even though I am a master alchemist. I'm still a failure. If I could rethink it in my next life, I would dedicate myself to both alchemy and martial arts, challenging the heavens." Unexpectedly, the protagonist wakes up wounded and wonders where he is. But before he can make any decisions, his mind is invaded by various images. Seeing these images, the protagonist realizes he has been reborn, and these memories are from when Lin Chuan took away his martial arts. This was 10,000 years ago. It is revealed that Lin Chuan was the protagonist's fiancée and had betrayed him, saying, "Now that I have ascended to the immortal palace of the three great sects, you're just a useless pest who insists on being by my side. Do you really think someone like you would be worthy of being by my side?" After that, the protagonist tells us that he abandoned martial arts and focused solely on alchemy. Even though he reached the pinnacle of alchemy, he always felt that something was missing. If he had cultivated martial arts along with alchemy, he might have challenged the heavens. Martia, the tragedy of the invasion of the demons from the divine earth, wouldn't have happened, and humanity wouldn't have been exterminated thanks to this jade pendant. A second chance was given to the protagonist. He swears that in this life, whether in alchemy or martial arts, he will reach perfection. After the oath, a subordinate of the protagonist, Kei Sangil, arrives, saying that there have been problems and that the young master of the Lin family, Lin Langang, invaded the medicinal herb garden and wants to speak with you. The protagonist remembers that in his past life, Lin Lang came thinking he owned the medicinal herb garden and humiliated him. But this time will be different. Lin Lang appears repentant, saying, "My sister is now a disciple of the Dancing Moa Palace. If you don't return the medicinal herb garden, it won't end well for you." The protagonist is not affected and responds by saying, "Your little sister uses dirty tactics in a dispute, thinking she's clever. You have a crush on your sister, don't you?" Initially, the medicinal herb garden was given to the LM family due to a marriage contract. LM Lang is startled by the protagonist's insight, but he doesn't care about it, as expected from someone brainless, and continues, "Kim Fung, if you got hurt in the dispute, it's because you're inferior. If my sister hadn't considered the marriage contract, you would have met your end, and you're not grateful to her." Returning to the main point, the protagonist continues, "You're always talking about your sister. You're a pervert obsessed with sisters. It seems that the Q family's execution team has work to do. But besides being a pervert and chatting, you're a coward." He tells the protagonist, "You know that the main Kim family team will arrive to harvest the spiritual herbs in just 1 month, right?" The coward proposes a bet to the protagonist. If the protagonist can reach the top of this year's spiritual herb harvest, he will deliver his iron mine, otherwise the medicinal herb garden will be his without much concern. The protagonist accepts the challenge with the condition that he keeps in writing that Sanji is concerned about the bet made by his young master with a smile and a mischievous look. The scene is cut, and we are shown the protagonist cultivating. He mentions that despite losing IQ and blood levels due to practicing the art of divine ascension, the issue of KO loss has been resolved. It is explained that a cultivator has 6 stages: body refinement, master, divine void, and divine annihilation, each stage having 9 levels. In a past life, due to a sneak attack by Lyncher, I lost almost all of my cultivation and could no longer practice martial arts. Fortunately, now with the art of divine ascension, I have been able to maintain my cultivation and retained the foundation of my martial arts. The art of divine ascension is a special technique I discovered in a past life with the effect of strengthening the perception of the 6 senses. This technique seems common, but those who practiced it in a past life became famous figures. I discovered that behind the common appearance of the art of divine ascension, there is an unknown power. Although I couldn't practice it in my past life, I still remember this technique. I never thought I would use it now. Immediately, Quincenil arrives, saying again that there was a problem. Upon arriving there, the protagonist is told that they have just received a message that this year's harvest time has been advanced by 2 weeks and the harvest has dried up. Now, with the shortened time, they would never be able to deliver. Despite this, the protagonist makes his move. With this move, he finds harmful weeds and wonders how the lunar sun herbs appeared in the flower bed. However, the protagonist already knows it could have been Ling Lang. The protagonist, with a smile and a confident expression, says, "I'm on it. Wow, that was a great gift from Milo to me." Later on, we see the arrival of Lin's trash and the LM family's harvesting team. The protagonist greets them, saying, "Morning has already begun. How can you be faster than the rooster at my house?" After that, Kim and Land from the harvesting team complain because the protagonist didn't kneel, and he would have given him a chance to apologize if he had knelt down. Here's another extra thinking he's the best. The protagonist's subordinate tries to convince him to kneel, but the protagonist won't tolerate disrespect from a fool, and he can't kneel even if he wanted to. That's right, all the people present there are surprised by the protagonist's words. The protagonist continues to provoke them, asking why a simple worker is acting like an officer when they're only here to pick fruits and herbs. Clapping for the crazy and dancing right away has become a trend. The collector gets furious, telling the protagonist that he thinks he can still deliver this year's herbs. The protagonist responds, "Just like in previous years, we'll deliver this year too." The collector smiles maliciously and says, "Who said this year would be like the others?" He tells the protagonist that this year's delivery quota has been doubled, and if he doesn't deliver, heads will roll. After that, we see a scene where Lin's trash and the collector make a deal to harm the protagonist. The protagonist tells the 2 extras to follow him, and when they enter and see the ruined crops, Lin's trash taunts him, and the collector points a ladder at the protagonist, threatening to execute him. The protagonist holds the ladder with his 2 fingers, saying, "Trash only knows how to be trash," and tells them to look around. Everyone present is shocked to see the state of the plantation. Both Lin Lang and the collector wonder how this is possible and how he managed to produce such high-quality products. Immediately, Lin Lang asks the protagonist how he took care of the garden. It is explained that the leaves of the Sun Lula tea, Yang nature, when planted together with herbs of Yin nature, will naturally wither, and in this era, no one knows that if you plant lunar sun seeds in a shaded place with some spiritual techniques, the growth of medicinal herbs accelerates. The protagonist says to Lin Lang, "No matter how I managed to fulfill your part of the agreement and hand over the iron mine, but that Ling Lang refuses, saying that the Prota had no proof whatsoever." In response, the Prota pulls out the agreement they had nodded to. NT. This Lin Lang is an MDA. Even though Lin Lang doesn't want to accept it, he tries to talk to the collector, but the collector refuses, saying that it has nothing to do with him. The scene shifts to the protagonist and his subordinates in front of the mine. Immediately, it is explained to us that an iron mine is worth nothing compared to a medicinal herb garden. But in my past life, this iron mine was not common. It had a mysterious ore of great value inside it. If I seize this opportunity, the value would be higher than that of the herb garden. Suddenly, a guard arrives and tells the Prota that there was an accident. and the mine collapsed. Dozens of miners were trapped. The scene shifts to the miners screaming, saying that it was the fault of the Kim family and the protagonist, and they demand that their relatives be returned to them. A subordinate asks the protagonist to leave immediately, but the protagonist refuses. The prota uses a technique to see inside the mine, discovering that the miners have not yet died. He finds out that the cause of this collapse was the work of Ling Lang's bastard. The protagonist shouts to the miners' families that if the stones were removed, they could save their relatives. But this does not work because the village is filled with hatred for the prota. The protagonist has a surprising idea. He tells the Kim family members to hand over their weapons to the angry relatives. Then the protagonist asks, "If there is a chance that your relatives are still alive, they really won't give up." Prota takes an oath, saying he will save everyone, and if he fails, he will take his own life. After hearing the protagonist's words, all the family members rush to help. Meanwhile, Ling Yang's scoundrel reveals that even if they rescue them, he has released the unbeatable poison. The scene cuts to the family members after they manage to open a passage, but not everything is rosy. The expressions on their faces change to tears and despair when they see the bodies on the ground. Immediately, the wretched Ling Gang seems to blame the protagonist, turning them against Prota. But Prota had it all planned and instructs Sanin to give the miners the fruits he brought. The protagonist tells Sanpen to feed them if they can't eat on their own. The scoundrel doesn't miss an opportunity and manipulates the family members into attacking the protagonist, even though the protagonist foresaw this. The protagonist tells Sanin to continue the treatment. Meanwhile, Sandin cries because he lost his first kiss with a man. Suddenly, one of the workers wakes up, surprising everyone, and is greeted by his relieved family. The protagonist explains that the poisonous Cantano is deadly in this era, but if you eat the fresh dragon fruit skin, it will be neutralized. He was the only one who knew this method. After waking up, the worker reveals that it was LM Lug who orchestrated everything, and with a wicked smile, the protagonist asks the workers' families if they would let the man who took their families away escape. The coward's face is unforgettable. The scene cuts to the miners thanking the protagonist, and Prota, in his thoughts, says that in his past life, he was never well received by the people. We are also told that the wretched Doing Hang fled after that. We see a scene of a conversation between the protagonist and Skin, where the protagonist reveals that he borrowed 500 gold coins from loan sharks, and not just any loan sharks, but the ones from Gold Shadow City, the most troublesome ones. Sandkin is scared because common families. They don't spend 20 gold coins per year and the protagonist took 500. The protagonist is a bit worried because he planned to use the iron ore obtained from the mine, but since Ling Gang fled, he will have to think of another way. While Sam Kin complains about the situation, we can see the silhouette of a person listening to their conversation. Sometime later, a man appears, calling the protagonist his kin, saying that his son has changed and asks how the protagonist is doing. The protagonist tells that in his past life, his father died fighting for him. The protagonist's father offers 2 pills that will help him recover his cultivation, but he tries to refuse, thinking about the difficulties his father went through to obtain them. However, his father doesn't accept a refusal and convinces him to accept. The scene cuts to the protagonist telling his father that he became an alchemist through a mysterious master who said that he has a rare talent for alchemy. After the conversation, the protagonist's father gives him the Kim family's battle token and says goodbye, expressing trust in the Kim family. Meanwhile, the protagonist reflects on the fact that his father entrusted such an important item as a battle token. Sometime later, one of the subordinates appears, saying there has been a commotion outside and thinks it might be the loan sharks. The protagonist becomes worried because they arrived earlier than expected. The protagonist prepares to face the situation while thinking about how to protect the family in the iron mine. And that brings us to the end of the chapter. If you enjoyed it and want more of this nonsense, give it a like and leave a comment below.